husband and his mistress at the airport.
I watched that 21-part story, so you don't have to. That's Gail, and she found out that her husband of 26 years was cheating on her entire marriage. So one day, Gail's husband is flying home from Europe, and he told her that he was going to be out there for a business trip. He said that this was going to be a speaking engagement and that it was the hardest $25,000 he ever had to earn. He's telling her, I miss you, I can't wait to see you, and she's telling him like the same thing, right? She's thinking everything is normal. She wanted to make dinner for him when he landed. So she calls the airlines because she's driving at the time and wanted to know when the flight landed. And she asked the rep, like, hey, here's the flight number. What time is my husband landing? And he's like, oh, I need your husband's name. And after telling him, like, if I was looking this up online, I wouldn't need his name. Why do you need his name? He was, like, insisting, like, I need the name, I need the name. So she finally gives over her husband's name. The rep is like, yes, Mr. Harold and Mrs. Sabrina landed about 20 minutes ago. And the wife is like, what? I don't know who Sabrina is, but yes, Harold's my husband. Okay, he landed 20 minutes ago. And he's like, yes, Mr. Harold and Mrs. Sabrina landed a few moments ago. And I'm just going to use real names because it just makes it easier. And she's like, very confused. And so she's like, okay, thank you. So then her husband calls when she gets off the phone, and she's fighting, not trying to spill the information. And he's like, I missed you. I'm so excited to see you soon. And she's like, yeah. So she's like, I'm going to stay quiet and wait for him to get home. So he gets home and she's like, oh, tell me about your trip. Let me see photos. Like, how was it? And he's like, oh, same old. I didn't really take photos because, we were ripping and running. Like, there was no time for that. Mind you, at this point in their marriage, she thinks that she has the perfect husband, that he is like a gem, that she's just so fortunate, would never cheat on her. She had no idea what she was about to uncover. They sit down to have dinner, and she brings up what the rep told her, and she's like, hey, when I called to ask when you were landing, the rep told me that this other person was on your itinerary. And he's like, who's that? I don't know who that is. And she's like, I don't know, you told me. He's the one that said that she was on your itinerary. She tells him that the name the rep told her was Sabrina, and he's telling her, like, people make mistakes all the time. That must have been a mistake. I don't know, it's Sabrina. So she just kind of puts it in the back of her head, but in her heart, she felt like something's not right. Like, there's more to this story. She goes to sleep that night, and she's literally sick to her stomach. She's like, what am I gonna do? She's crying, and she gets this idea, like, I need to go check the credit card bill. And she, has been married for 26 years. She doesn't know what's happening in their finances. She trusts her husband completely. So she never really does this, but they're piled up on her kitchen counter. She's like, tomorrow morning, I'm going to go look through those bills. The next morning, it's Sunday morning, and she's like, okay, I'm going to go to church. He makes up some excuse, like, oh, I have to go to work, and doesn't go to church with her. When she gets back, she was getting ready to go to a Falcons game, but then something was like, hey, girl, go check them bills. So she's like, I'm about to go do that right now. So she walks over to the bills and opens up just one bill, and she sees this girl's name up and through that bill several times, consistently. Mind you, this is her credit card that she put him as an authorized user on years ago, and she's seeing flights all over the place, trips, just all types of things, and this woman's name running through her bill over and over and over again. At this point, she's running late to the game. She's like, I gotta go. She tries to be present with her girls and enjoy herself, but she literally can't. All she's thinking about is these bills. When she got home from the game, she was able to see from December 2021 all the way to October 2022, Sabrina's name was through that bill consistently. When he was traveling for work and telling Gail that he couldn't come with her because he was going to be busy or wasn't going to be fun, it was actually because he was with Sabrina. The dates started correlating. She's crying hysterically at this point. She calls him, no answer. She texts him, no answer. She calls his boy, whose house he said he was going to go watch the game at. He doesn't pick up. She texts his friend, and she's like, hey, is my husband with you? He doesn't reply. She's like, what is going on? Finally, the husband calls her back, and he's like, hey, sorry, I ran out to grab something. What's going on? She just starts repeating the name Sabrina over and over and over again. And he's like, why do you keep saying that name? What is wrong with you? And she's like, just keep saying it, keep saying it. Gail tells him, I know everything. The gig is up, you nasty mother. He's like, hold on, what's going on? I'm coming home right now. She's like, yeah, come on home. He tries to run into the house all hyped up, like, why you keep saying this woman's name? Gail looks at her husband and tells him, I'm going to ask you one time, and don't lie to me because I know the truth. Was this woman with you on this flight? He's like, no, I don't know why you keep mentioning her. She's like, don't lie to me now. I really do know the truth. At that point, something, I don't know, clicked in his head because his mask fell right off, she said. And he just admitted to it and was like, yeah, she was. She's like, well, is she your girlfriend? He's like, yeah. She's like, well, how long have you been together? He's like, a few years. At this point, Gail is crying hysterically. She's getting a banging headache, and she already has blood pressure issues, so her blood pressure ends up skyrocketing, something crazy. And she's like, I have to go to the hospital. I literally cannot deal with this anymore. He offers to drive her, and she's like, no, I'll take my chances. I don't need you. Drives herself to the hospital, and she's there. She's hyperventilating. They're telling her, ma'am, you need to calm down. You are literally going to have a stroke if you do not calm down and get this heart rate and this blood pressure under control. They call her doctor. They get her medications. They get her to calm down. They send her back home, and she walks in, and he's just laying on the couch eating Cheetos, like nothing is wrong. Like, absolutely fine. Talking about what they tell you. She goes to sleep that night just crying her eyes out, just weeping. And she's like, I cried so hard I woke up the next morning, my eyes were almost swollen shut, you know. And she walks out the room because she slept in a separate room from him that night. And he's like walking around whistling, feeling great, having a good old time, like feeling lighter. Like his load is lighter, she said. Like she felt heavy as a ton of bricks. But he's walking around like, oh, the truth is out. I am good now. Like, stark differences in the experience, basically. She just looks at him. She goes, what made you treat me like this? Like, what made you do this? Like, what did I do wrong? Like, where did I fall short? And he's like, you didn't do nothing wrong. You're a great wife, actually. I have no issues with you. She's like, I do my best to, you know, take care of myself. I try to make myself look presentable to you. Like, where did I go wrong? He's like, nothing. You didn't do anything wrong. So she's like, okay, well, I'm confused by that. Well, this is what I'm going to need from you. She's like, I'm going to want you to sell the house. I'm going to want to move away, and I'm going to want you to go to counseling. And he's like, well, I don't know why you want all that, but okay, I'll go. And she's like still very confused by his response to that. So she asked him, are you going to continue seeing her? And he goes, well, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I'm not going to see her. She's like, oh, so you want a divorce? And he's like, no, I don't want a divorce. I'm not going to let anybody come in and F up my money. So at this point, she's like, what, he wants me to stay with him while he like does his thing? And we stay like, no, we're clearly moving towards a divorce now. So she gets her name, goes to Instagram and starts doing a little bit of digging. And she's like, well, thank God, at least there's no photos of them together on their Instagram. At this point, she hasn't even told her friends and family about this yet. Her best friend ends up calling her, and she is like trying to hide it from her best friend, but she ends up breaking down and telling her everything. And her best friend's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. She's literally shocked. The best friend that always has something to say literally had nothing to say. She just sat there on the phone. Gail's looking at this woman's Instagram like, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. She's so young. Like, of course he wants her. Like, look at me. Like, just like, you know, really beating herself up. Her friends are like, first of all, she kind of looked like you. Sorry, friend. Second of all, that's all plastic surgery. That's all fillers. Like, she could never. When she finally meets up with her friends for lunch, they tell her, like, they do have photos together. They are out there, you know, being, you know, photographed together. And she was just, like, heartbroken. Like, you're really out here embarrassing me. So a few days later, he tells her, like, hey, I think we need a break for like 3 to 6 months. Like, I'm going to go away. You're going to stay here. I think we just need some time apart. And she's like, okay. And he's like, if you find somebody in those like 3 to 6 months, like, feel free to like go with them. So when Gail first initially shared this story back in January of 2024, it started with her sharing the husband and the mistress at the airport together, and her being like, good morning, Harold, have a good flight. And then the mistress sitting there like stunned, the husband stunned. And then she went on to share like an 8-part story, and that's what I just told you guys right now. Then she comes back because the mistress ended up having a response basically saying like, Gail, you were the side chick at one point. Your husband was married when you got with him. And Gail came back and was like, I didn't know he was married. When I found out he was married, I made him go file for divorce, and I didn't date him until he filed for a divorce, even though I ended up finding out that he lied to me and never filed for divorce, and we started dating. So I never had the intentions of being a side chick. You did. And then she comes out with the receipts because Sabrina was claiming that like Gail was trying to be like her, and she's like, girl, I've had these blonde hair that you're saying that I copied from you for over 20 years. Like, she's pulled out receipts, showed photos of her and her husband from like back in the day when she'd been had this hairstyle. Gail even states that when she first met her husband, she was not attracted to him. He was morbidly obese, and she did not find him attractive. It wasn't until she got to know him and got to know his personality, and of course the gifts kind of helped. She warmed up to him, and they eventually got married. But she wanted to clarify like to what that woman said, like, I was never a side chick, you know. The wife and the mistress have a little bit of back and forth, not too much, mostly like in the comments of Instagram photos. But for the most part, like, the wife finds out that the mistress was encouraging the husband to leave Gail and to go be with her. And she was just like, what kind of woman are you? So then 3 days ago, Gail came back and gave us an update, telling us basically that like the woman got super disrespectful. She started leaving things in the car for Gail to find, like her panties, her hair accessories. She was subbing her on Instagram, putting clips from the movie Harlem Nights, trying to like sub her, being like, your husband's never coming home kind of thing. She really realized her husband did not care about her at all, and this mistress was actually relishing in her pain and in her trauma. After going through all the information and going through and digging and finding out a lot of info, she not only found out that her husband was cheating on her, not only with Sabrina, but with over 20 different women. And not only that, but he was financing a lot of these women. With Sabrina specifically, he was financing her mother, the boyfriend, the children. Everybody was getting cash apps apparently. On top of that, he was taking them to trips. He was sending Sabrina and her girls off on trips. He was buying them Cartier. He was doing all types of stuff. He was just cashing out on these these women, all while having a wife. Like, she dug about 10 years into the past and found over 20 women in just the first 5 years alone. She said all of this was just so detrimental and so damaging to herself and her self-esteem and her whole mindset, because she was just like, these women are young, they're beautiful, they're vivacious, I'm feeling old, I'm feeling run down, I'm feeling, lifeless. Like, what is he trying to communicate to me through these women that he chooses, And just really felt like I was in a really dark place when I first found out all of this. Like, I thought my husband was great, and he turned out to be a complete scumbag our entire relationship. And what was even more saddening was that when she went to go talk to lawyers within the first 2 weeks of finding out that she was having a divorce, the lawyers had a lot of tough questions for her, and Gail unfortunately didn't have the answers. She didn't know where the money was, how much they even had. She didn't know a lot of key information, and she was just telling people, like, please don't lose this type of control in your marriage. Know what's going on, be a part of the finances, know where everything is, just don't be ever so trusting. Like, she completely and utterly trusted her husband with her life. And this man, even when she would have surgeries, would run off and not be there to take care of her, but he would be with all these different women that she ended up finding out over the course of 26 years, instead of being there for her when she needed him the most. After going through their messages and reading Sabrina and his conversation, he was traumatized reading all of these messages, but she had to find out the truth, and she wasn't going to get it from the husband. So the day she found out about the affair was actually them coming back from her birthday trip in Paris that they spent together. And then the very next weekend, they were actually about to go on another trip to celebrate their anniversary. So she's sitting there in the house like, I didn't even kick you out, and you're going on all these trips with this woman. So she is like, whatever, do your thing. They go on a trip, and then he says, I'm not going to come back to the house because I feel like you're going to do something to me. The last time we were arguing, you had your eyes half closed. And she's like, boy, I'm not about to throw my life away for you, for her, for this situation, for nobody. Like, y'all not worth it. She also cautions people to not cheat on folks that have been in law enforcement, because they can look up all types of things. So at this point, she don't know where this man is, and she's like looking at his stuff, getting triggered, smelling his smell in the house. She's like, I need him to get his stuff out of this house. So she messages him, and he's like, I pay for the mortgage in that house. I'm not moving anything. And she's like, well, that's not fair. You moved this girl from California all the way to Atlanta. You're paying her mortgage. Go be where you want to be. Like, why do I have to be punished for you having an affair? Like, I'm very confused by that. The wildest part about all of this too is a lot of these women knew about Gail. Not only did they know Gail, they would show up at events that Gail would be at, would be there with her husband, and they would come and smile in her face and talk to her, and some of them would even serve her food and be servers at the events that she was at, and would just be like acting like it was normal. She was like, what kick was this guy getting about being in the same room with his wife and the woman that he's sleeping with? I think that hurt her a lot too, just knowing like these women were just like kikiing and smiling in her face, all while sleeping with her man and getting their life financed by him. Absolutely insane. After talking to the attorneys and them telling her, like, ma'am, you don't know a lot of key information, you're going to need to go digging, she asked God. She was like, God, I don't even know where to start. Please help me. And he just started showing her everything. When she texted him and confronted him about the 20 women, he was just, like, acting super cocky, like, yeah, whatever. And she was just like, what the hell? So she's like, you know what? I got something for that ass. She put all 20 women in a group message, messaged them all, talking shit, dragging them. She put a picture of the husband in there too, just so there wasn't any confusion. And these women are responding back like, I don't know who that is. You got the wrong number. She's like, well, if this is the wrong number, block me. She had a boss. She was like, was that the most mature thing to do? Nope. Did it feel good in the moment? Yep. And I'm happy for you, Gail. I'm glad you got your ones and twos in. She was actually shocked what these women were willing to do for a bag, for a trip, for a little bit of money. But she's like, women are gullible. I'm gullible too. But she's like, I'm not that gullible, So she was like, I can blame these women, but I can't, because at the end of the day, he was the one that was married. He's the one that made the vows to me. So she was fully aware who the actual enemy was. Filed for divorce in December 2022, moved on with her life. She wants to share more stories. She said, I want to share some more stories because I don't know a woman named Andre. She's like, I don't know if you guys do either. And then ended the story time on that point. So she's going to come back and tell more, and maybe I'll give you guys an update on that. Gail, you are honestly a boss. You handled that. Like, I get crying, I get feeling your emotions. You have to do that when you're going through a breakup, but ultimately pulling yourself up by the bootstraps and making it happen and protecting yourself and your babies is the number one priority, and you did that. And I'm proud of you, and I'm sending you so much love. As always, you guys, go send them love as well. I appreciate you guys as always. Bye.
Wow, this is heartbreaking, but she is so empowering. To see that she's still standing on her feet after all of that is crazy. Incredible. First of all, women are amazing. I don't know how she did it, and I hope she keeps moving forward in a positive way. and gets this man out of her life forever. But I believe that we can all do that at the end of the day. It's just a relationship. Even if it's just a divorce, you can still live after that. You can still continue on in life and start anew. You just have to be positive and move forward in a way that's not gonna like break your character, and it's still gonna like help you be a better person. Shoot, if something like that happened to me, I don't know where I'd be. She's stronger than me, because that is nuts. What do you guys think? Put it in the comment section below.